Question 15, we're asked to round off these three numbers to the nearest 100. So let's write this down. So this is the units or the ones column. This is the tens column. And this is the hundreds column. This here is the thousands column. And this is the tens of thousands column. Now we need to round it off to the nearest 100. So what I tend to do is I'll go to the 100 column and I'll put a line there. Now the number to the right, this number here, this digit, is what we call the decider, because it decides what happens to this number to the left of that line. There's two things that can happen. If it is 4 or less, you leave this alone. Now, if this digit or this number is 5 or more, you simply add 1 to this number here. We can see that that is 4 or less, so this stays the same. So now watch this. 209, and everything in that direction after the line turns to a 0. So that stays a 0 and that turns to a 0. So let me just remove all this. So we said everything after this line becomes 0. So that stays a 0 and this 6 becomes a 0. So our answer is 1, 2, 3, comma 20,900. So that becomes 20,900. Now we have the number 2090.6. So we have a decimal point here. So we'll put the decimal point here. And this column here is the tenths. So what I'm going to do is put a little lowercase t for tenths. And then next to it we have the hundredths column. So tenths would be 1 over 10, and 100ths would be 1 over 100. Don't worry about them too much in this question, but just remember after the decimal point it's a tenth and a hundredth. So let's write this number down, 2090.6. So in the thousands column we put a 2, 0 in the hundreds, and 90. Point, and then 6 in the tenths column. That's our first decimal place. As before, because we want to round up to the nearest 100, we go to the hundreds column and put a line to the right, always to the right. So the line goes here. And we said the number to the right of the line is called the decider. And there's two rules for that. The first rule is if this decider is 4 or less, we leave this number alone. And if this decider is 5 or more, we add 1 to this column, the number to the left of this line. Now in our case, because this is for the second one, we need to add 1 to this. So this 0 becomes a 1. This stays as a 2. So at the moment it's 2, 1. And we said everything to the right of this line becomes a 0. So let's rub this out. So that becomes a 0. That stays a 0. The decimal point comes here. And the 6 turns into a 0. We've not finished just yet, so let's remove this line. And we have this number 2100.0. Now, because we're rounding off to the nearest 100, everything, including the decimal point, we do not need. So I can cross this off. I don't need that. This here is the number that I need. So this is my number, and as before, 1, 2, 3, comma. This is your thousands, so this is all going on in your head. So it's 2,100. So if I round this number off, it's going to be 2,100. 2,100. Our third number here is 209.06. So there's 2 decimal places. So 209, bring the decimal point down, 0, 6. So this is the hundredths column. This is the tenths column. This is the ones or the units column. This is the tens column, and this is the hundreds column. As before, because we're going to round up to the nearest 100, we go to the hundreds column and put a line to the right. And the number to the right of that line is called our decider. And again, it has 2 rules. Can you remember them? First rule, if this number, the decider, is 4 or less, we leave the number to the left alone. So we leave alone. Our second rule is, if the decider is 5 or more, what we do is we add 1 to this number. So because that's part of the first rule, we leave this alone. So that stays as 2. Now, as before, all the numbers to the right of this line turn into a 0. So let's remove this. This 0 stays as 0. This 9 becomes a 0. This decimal point comes down here. This 0 stays as a 0. And finally, this 6 becomes a 0. Now, when you're rounding off to the nearest 100, anything after the decimal point we do not need. So we can cross the decimal point off and the 2 zeros. We don't need those. So let's remove this line. Our number now is 200. So our number 209.06 rounds off to 200 to the nearest 100. But remember, this is only one way of doing it. So whichever method you're comfortable with or you've been taught, you can use that. In question 16, we're told that 6 identical bricks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They are identical. Identical. All that means that they're all exactly the same. That's all that means. We have 6 identical bricks here, and on this balance they weigh the same as these 5 large identical bricks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 large bricks here and 6 small bricks. We're given that each small brick is 2.5 kilograms, and we are asked to work out the weight of the large brick there. So the first thing we can do is work out the total weight of this side. So the total weight or mass, really, but they've used the word weight, we'll use the word weight. 2.5 times 6, because each brick is 2.5 kilograms and there's 6 of them, and that's the calculation we need to do. So I'm going to do it this way. I prefer to do it this way. I'm going to move this decimal point to the right 1 place. So this number here becomes 25 times 6. So I'm going to write that as column multiplication. 25 times 6. I do 6 times 5, which is 30. Put the 0 down and carry the 3 over to the next column. Then I do 6 times 2. And that is 12, plus the 3 we've carried over, and that makes it 15. We put 5 in this column and carry the 1 over to the next column. So 25 multiplied by 6 is 150. Now we have to undo this here. So we have 150, and the decimal point in your mind should be there. So 150 point, that is exactly the same as 150. Now I need to go in the opposite direction, 1 place. So I need to take this and move it back here. This disappears. So what I now have is 15.0, and that is the same as 15. So my 6 small bricks weigh 15 kilograms or kilograms. So if these 6 bricks are 15 kilograms, these 5 large bricks must also be 15 kilograms. So what I simply need to do is 15 kilograms shared by 5. So I'll do that calculation here. 15 shared by 5, or 15 divided by 5. And again, I like to write it like this because it helps me. 15 shared by 5. It's raining and the number 15 is getting wet, so we build a bus shelter for the number 15, and 15 goes inside and 5 has to go outside. How many 5s are there in this one? We can't get a 5 from there, so we put 0. And we carry this 1 over to the 5 and it becomes 15. So now this is 15. So I ask, how many 5s are there in this 15? So if I do it quickly, 5, 10, 15. 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 5s in this 15. I put that there. There's no remainder, so we stop. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. And because this is a leading 0, we can ignore this. So our answer is 3. So now I know each large brick is 3 kilograms each.